August 10th, 2022 meeting of the Moscow Planning and Zoning Commission. Welcome, everybody. Glad to see you here. Got a full agenda tonight, so we'll get right to it. First item is approval of the July 27th minutes. Do we have any additions, corrections, deletions? Okay, would somebody like to move to approve? Okay, Dennis moves second. Drew second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And abstentions. Okay. Public comment. We have three folks in the audience. I suspect that you're welcome to come and address us if you want, but you'll probably have a chance coming very soon. Okay, great. So the next item is the public hearing, proposed rezone of a 10-acre property located directly north of the current terminus of Warbonnet Drive. So Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. For you tonight, we have a proposal for a rezone. This is the 10-acre property located directly north of the current terminus of Warbonnet Drive in the city. It's the estate of Kathleen J. Montgomery is requesting the rezone of the 10-acre property. And the proposal is to rezone from the motor business zone, which it currently is designated, to the multiple family residential, which is our R4 designation. So this is the subject property highlighted in red at the top of your screen there. Have to bear with me. Couldn't figure out how to change this pointer, so we're gonna do a little zoom. So it's the property here, the north of your screen. You can see Warbonnet Drive there, heading north-south, which is designated as a minor arterial. You also have A Street, which heads east-west here, terminates into the University of Idaho property there to the east. This is Walmart, located here. Gritman Medical Office buildings located to the north of that. LDS Church here. I believe there's a trampoline park in the vicinity here. La Quinta there. Applebee's and Sherry's located in that area as well. And then a view of to the north of this property. It's currently in a conservation easement. And then just a closer view of that property and then the adjoining land uses to the south. And there are two homesteads located to the east of this property. They're currently within area city impact in Latah County, as well as the property to the north there. So looking at the comprehensive plan land use designation, it's currently designated as auto urban commercial, as well as all the rest of the surrounding properties. Agricultural forestry to the north within the county. So taking a look at what auto urban commercial designation states, is intended to provide for commercial services and developments that are motor vehicle oriented or those which require large amounts of land. Should be located adjacent to existing commercial developments and along major arterials where vehicular traffic could be accommodated. Developments within these designations should be required to provide significant landscaping, which would be applied to enhancing areas along the street edge, screening parking lots, and buffering adjacent uses. And then it points to the motor business as being the most appropriate zone. So it brings us to the zoning configuration of the area. This property is in the motor business zone currently. And so 2017, it was annexed into the city, and the applicant at that time had requested the motor business designation. A lot of the other surrounding properties are zoned motor business as well. So Gritman, the other medical uses along the north side of A Street are motor business, as well as Walmart and the commercial uses on the west side of Warbonnet. The LDS Church, as well as this is a well number 10, city's well number 10 site, which is located here. The picture doesn't reflect that because it was currently under development then. But the LDS Church and well number 10 are currently zone R4, which is the proposal the applicant's requesting tonight. The R4 district provides the most intensive residential land uses to be applied, especially near adequate public facilities where they're available, especially near the University of Idaho campus or the Central Business District. Adequate transportation access should be given high priority. And then really a wide range of uses, predominantly residential. So anywhere between single family, twin homes, townhouses, and multifamily dwellings. There's also permitted limited professional office uses up to 2,000 square feet in size. Bed and parking lots are also permitted. Looking at Warbonnet, like I mentioned earlier, it's a minor arterial developed to a 36-foot wide paved roadway with curb gutter sidewalks on both sides of the street. There are currently water, sanitary, and storm mains extended up to the current terminus of Warbonnet. That brings us to the comprehensive plan, Thoroughfare plan. And this shows the current designations of the roadways. You can see that blue line represents, the solid blue lines represent existing built roadways. And that's a minor arterial designation. And then you can see the dashed lines there heading to the north. Those represent future roadways as properties are developed. And you can also see A Street is intended to go through the U of I property and end up connecting with A Street at the intersection of Farm Road there to the east. And so those are the future roadway alignments. So just a little bit of background. I mentioned before the 2017 annexation. There was a condition upon that rezone in annexation at the time that stated that Warbonnet Drive and public utilities shall be extended to the northern boundary of the subject property in accordance with the alignment of the Thoroughfare plan within the City of Moscow Comprehensive Plan as development occurs upon the subject property. And so City Council ended up approving that condition. And so now we're having a rezone request on the property and needed to carry that condition through since a development agreement hasn't been entered into between the city and the applicant up to this point. And so engineering department is recommending to carry that condition over to this proposal tonight. So with that, staff's recommendation is the commission conduct the public hearing and upon consideration of testimony received, recommend approval of the proposed rezone from the motor business to the R4 zone with the following condition. The property owner enter into a recorded development agreement that includes the following: that Warbonnet and public utilities shall be extended to the northern boundary of the property in accordance with the alignment of the Thoroughfare plan as development occurs upon the subject property. And of course, based upon the commission's decision, direct staff to prepare the RCS. Certainly try to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Mike? Joel?
How does the conservation easement on the land to the north relate to the proposed extension of the road down through that?
Well, I mean, we certainly are cognizant of the conservation easement, but as far as future roadway alignments, that's really something we don't take into consideration because usually there's a date where that ceases to exist and maybe it's 99 years, but at some point in the future, it may be removed from the property and we're faced with a property that may not have access to the city and no way for the city to grow. And so that's really the concern as far as the conservation.
Does a conservation easement have any provisions for how required roadways can be constructed? Exceptions to the verbiage of a conservation easement?
Each one is crafted on a case-by-case scenario. So certainly the applicant is probably familiar with the conservation easement that could answer that question. But city has no control over conservation easements. And so, really it's hard for us to plan around conservation easements because they're privately held and could change at really any point that we don't have any control over. So we're going to recommend the street be extended regardless of whether there's a conservation easement on it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Mike? Joel, I seem to recall when we did the rezone, there was a lot of discussion about the conservation easement, and my recollection is it's in perpetuity.
That would be normal.
Yeah. So obviously it doesn't really have an effect on this immediate thing, but it's
I guess I would say it does have an effect because we're proposing to require a roadway of sufficient volume and so on to serve as the ring road or whatever it might be called. And if it's never going to come to fruition, number one, is there any alternative routes that would provide north-south connectivity?
And it probably is a question that we're not going to be able to answer tonight. But yeah, as you're saying, that's on a case-by-case basis. But the only requirement on this one is that the road gets extended to the northern boundary of of this current. Yeah.
But I guess my question is whether that's necessarily the route which it should be.
I don't know, it would seem to me that we would need to preserve the possibility of going on through the conservation easement, even though we don't know for sure if it's going to. So unanswerable question, I suppose, at this point. So, okay. Any other questions for Mike or comments? Or okay, Mike, thank you. With that, we'll open the public hearing. And first, we'd like to hear from the applicant.
Hi, good evening. Dropping all my papers here. Cody Moore, I'm an attorney at Westberg Repke Moore. I represent the Montgomery estate, the applicant in this matter. I think Mr. Ray presented this as well as you could, so I think at this point I just could answer any questions. The proposal is effectively to be able to develop a apartment complexes. This property has been, as Shelley Bennett, who's in the audience, can attest, this it's been attempted to be sold for a number of years without success. And so at this point, this rezone makes the most sense. We are under contract. It's ready to be sold and be developed as desired. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Joel?
Would you like to address the questions that I raised?
Yeah, the property to the north is owned by another party. It's my understanding that I didn't bring any documentation for the conservation easement with me, but it's my understanding that it is perpetual.
Yeah.
It would be our preference that actual building of the road and the utilities be not be done until that would be till that route was sort of for certain, because that would just be a waste of resources if it was a road to nowhere. But we also understand that the 2017 ordinance does already require that. And so we're prepared to comply with Mike's recommendation here. But I think you raised some good questions. I don't think the easement would affect that necessarily, but it would be something to explore a little further.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And next, we'd like to hear from anybody in support of the project.
They always love it when the real estate agent comes up. Shelley Bennett, 2279 Mosher Street in Moscow. And I do also represent the Montgomery estate. And yes, I've represented them for about 7 years. And it's been under contract 3 times. And the only contracts that we've ever had that were going to be for residential use. So they thought maybe it would be an expansion for Gritman when they rezoned it for motor business originally. They thought that might give them an opportunity to expand, but there's never been demand for that. So I would be in support of the rezone for R4. I think it's a good use and we are lacking locations.
And Shelley, you commented in the neighborhood meeting that you thought that it wasn't a good business location. Is that?
Commercial real estate needs traffic. And they won't go to locations that are secondary or tertiary, and this is tertiary. So anytime we've ever tried to get somebody to go onto a secondary road like A Street, when we zoned that motor business and it turned into residential except for 2, people won't go. The companies won't go. They need traffic to locate for a business. If there would have been an opportunity for medical expansion, but that just doesn't exist.
Okay, great. Any questions for Shelley?
One further question. Is a single road entry point to this parcel adequate?
I think it would be adequate. I think it would be better if this parcel was developed as one 10-acre parcel without a road going up through the middle of it. I think it would be the best use of the land for it to be one big development. In order for anybody to use that future road, it would be across the perpetual easement. They would have to buy it and take it from eminent domain. That's the only way it can ever become a road. I don't see that as ever really going to happen, but as Mike said,
Yeah.
things that it might happen. So,
Any other questions for Shelley? All right, thank you, Shelley. I appreciate your. And I'm assuming that there is nobody to speak in opposition. So with that, we will close the public hearing and open it up for comments. And I do have one question, Mike, regarding, I mean, I think Joel's point in the discussion, if at some point in time it was really obvious that that was not going to be a good plan to take the road up there to the northern boundary, is that something that could be renegotiated, reassessed?
Yeah, it certainly could go back to, city council would have the authority to waive that requirement. So they would just have to go back through the process in order to drop that condition of the rezone. But certainly it's as development occurs on the property. If it's going to be a multifamily apartments, once you get over a certain number of units, it's like 30 units, then you're required to have multiple points of access. So they're going to have to extend the road up to a certain extent anyway. And you can't just end the road at just a dead end like that with a private into a parking lot. It has to either be a cul-de-sac, some type of turnaround like that, or the road has to extend further up and there has to be some type of turnaround incorporated as part of the development. But yeah, the road's going to have to be extended up to a certain point in order to get that 2 points of access for fire code requirements. And so, I mean, we can just, as development occurs, don't necessarily have to extend it all the way to that north property boundary, but we can assess that on a kind of development by development basis if it's going to be developed like that, which just speaking with the potential purchaser, that's what it appears like it's going to be developed.
So if we approve this tonight, that doesn't necessarily go down carved in stone. It's something that could be revisited if it's appropriate to revisit it. I mean, I'm not suggesting that we should not approve it without the condition. I think we should go ahead with the condition. I just it gives me a little bit more comfortable feeling if I know that if it doesn't at some point in time during the development seem appropriate, and as Joel is talking about and Shelley as well. So, okay, that's fine.
Everything
kind
can
of
be
wanted
revisited.
to get a sense. So, okay, any other?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yes. Drew, did you have something?
No, my only comment is we're lacking housing, and this is an opportunity. So,
Yeah, no, I sure agree with that.
I have a
So,
comment too. So to me, it's similar to when you have a development and you make them build a road to the next property line. You stub the road out, and it's similar. So, at some point in time, there may be a need for a road, and this will probably get developed before the road gets developed, the continued road gets developed. But you still need to leave that option there, that condition there,
Yeah.
so that
I
it's
agree.
available.
yeah,
Well,
certainly agree.
we heard the description for how that would happen. It would have to be purchased and obtained by eminent domain which would be a path forward
Yeah.
if at some point it becomes desirable to do so.
Yeah.
Therefore, I would certainly prefer to see at least at this point, the condition kept.
Yes. Okay, good. I certainly agree with that. So, okay, well, are we ready to move forward? Any other comments, or I would entertain a motion to approve the rezone request? So by Drew, a second? Second from Scott. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions. Okay. We normally, as a second part of this, ask staff to prepare the relevant criteria and standards document. Jennifer has drafted a document that would, based on the assumption that we would approve this, she passed that out today. I'm comfortable with going ahead and putting that up for a motion and approving it so that we can sign that, and that way they can move forward with the project. So are you all comfortable with that?
Yes.
And we've kind of talked about that. So, okay, so would somebody like a motion to approve the RCS as drafted?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
Gloria, and second from Joel. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed and abstentions. Great. Okay, thank you very much. And Mike and Jennifer, thank you for doing that. I think that very helpful to move that process forward. All right, so thank you all for being here. The next item on the agenda is another public hearing, proposal for a comprehensive plan, land use designation, zoning designation, preliminary subdivision plat and planned unit development for a 13.75 acre property proposed to be annexed into the city of Moscow and generally located southwest of the West Palouse River Drive, ball fields and property in southwest of the University of Idaho Arboretum. That is a mouthful.
I'll repeat that.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr.
please.
Chair. So this is the Eddington Estates proposal before you tonight. So I'm sure you're familiar. We just heard this last year of the Eddington First Edition. You can't quite see that on your screen yet, as it's still going through final plat. But really, essentially, this area here was Eddington First Edition that was approved by P&Z and Council. This is the park property, City West Palouse River Drive ball fields property. U of I Arboretum here to the north. So we have a county island that's still in this location. And then various University Heights Edition, Anderson Frontier Park, Anderson Frontier Edition. So primarily single family across Palouse River Drive there to the north. And then we have Schweitzer property, albeit it's an older photo from 2018, so we don't show their current building that's being built right now. And we got the city limits boundary, which is the purple line surrounding the city there. And so this is the subject property highlighted in red, and at the center of your screen here to the left, currently contains, I guess we'll get to that, currently contains one single family dwelling, as well as a few outbuildings there to the very north. And I think I have a closer up view a little later on. But the applicant is BBC LLC, and they're proposing those 4 actions, and the property in total is 13.75 acres in size. They are proposing to annex that into the city of Moscow. And the first action is a comprehensive plan land use designation. So upon annexation, the commission has to determine the appropriate designation to assign the property, and it's currently auto urban residential. And they're proposing, similar to Eddington First Edition, a combination of high density residential as well as auto urban residential designations. And then the zoning designation is currently ag forest in the area city impact. And the proposal is a combination of residential office and medium density residential, which is the R3 zone. And of course, prior to annexation, commission's charged to review the property and provide council a recommendation regarding appropriate future land use as well as zoning to be applied upon the property upon annexation. That brings us to the Eddington Estates subdivision as well as a PUD. So coinciding together there, we have 10.5 acres area, so a little bit less. This is just the R3 zoned proposed area of the property. There's 9 lots ranging from 0.73 acres to 1.57 acres in size. So quite a bit larger of the typical lot that you'd see in Eddington First Edition. That's largely because of the topography and trying to fit in with the existing house on this property. There is a private street, doesn't pretty much extends and then into a hammerhead configuration at the very end. And that's largely because of just the lack of connectivity and topography of the area, why they've chosen to utilize a private street in this circumstance. So this is a closer up view of that property. So there's a single family dwelling, which is located here. Kind of got a long driveway. You can see it currently uses the Eddington First Edition access. There's a few outbuildings located in this vicinity here. You also have a property that's in between Eddington First Edition that begins right here and ends up wrapping around here to the south. That's proposed to remain in the county. That's a different owner. Germer Construction owns that property. So that brings us to the comprehensive plan land use designation. As you can see, it's auto urban residential, which is the lighter yellow shade there. To the north with Eddington First Edition is the high density residential. That's the reddish color. And of course, the park is an open space designation. Arboretum is civic institutional there to the north. And then Anderson Frontier additions to the north of Palouse River Drive are largely auto urban residential as well. So this would be the proposal, retain the southern 10.5 acres in auto urban residential, but redesignate the northern about 3 acres in high density residential. So taking a look at what high density residential means in the comp plan, it allows for the highest density residential development, common densities between 15 and 26 units per acre. Looking at areas appropriate for this designation include those located adjacent to higher areas of higher activity where there's a range of uses. And the high density residential should be located adjacent or in close proximity to arterial or collector streets, which Palouse River Drive is a arterial street. And Augustine within Eddington First Edition is designated as a collector street as well. New areas of high density residential development should be located near mixed use activity areas and corridors that accommodate multimodal transportation. And then it points to lands appropriate for that designation. It's one zone R3, R4 residential office. Then going through auto urban residential, I think we can probably just glaze over this. It's typically single family, 7 to 11,000 square feet in size, primarily single family, but could include a range of uses, twin homes, townhouses as well. And then it points to the R1, R2, or R3 zones as being appropriate for that designation. Brings us to the current zoning configuration of the area. The property is currently an ag forest designation, so it doesn't show on this map, but all the surrounding properties in Latah County and the area city impact, that's also ag forest as well. Within the city there, we have residential office within Eddington First for the northernmost portion of the property, and then it transitions to R3 to the south. Of course, the Parks Farm Ranch presently, and the proposal would be to kind of mirror the residential office on the other side of this Augustine Avenue there, and transition to R3 similar to Eddington First Edition as you head to the south. Residential office, so it's moderately intensive zone, includes both offices and high density housing, serves as transitional zone between residential zoning districts and commercial or industrial zones, appropriately applied in the following circumstances. On the perimeter of commercial or industrial districts where they abut residential, where transportation networks greater than desirable for lower density residential uses, where landforms create sites which are reasonably accessible by transportation systems and which are buffered from nearby residential areas, and where development patterns in a neighborhood will allow development of moderate intensity to occur without producing adverse visual impact or harm. And that allows just a wide range of residential uses, for all the residential uses there are, between single family all the way to multifamily. But there are some limited institutional and commercial uses, so community gardens, veterinary offices, professional offices, does allow restaurants up to 1,500 square feet in size, some childcare facilities, group neighborhoods, community neighborhood centers, healthcare services, public parks, telecommunications services, personal care services, bed and breakfast are all permitted as well. R3 provides for an increase over R2. It allows different housing types. So that's also appropriate where activity levels are moderate, terrain permits construction of somewhat larger structures, and where the public systems and neighborhood facilities can accommodate a greater intensity. That's guided by the comprehensive plan. And then looking at the allowed uses, so really single family, two family, twin homes and townhouses are the residential uses. Also urban agriculture, some limited childcare facilities, and public parks and rec facilities located there as well. That brings us to Eddington Estates Subdivision. So the preliminary plat, it's that 10.5 acre area, so 9 lots. So looking at the minimum lot size for R3, 6,000 square feet. So certainly all the lots being proposed here are well over that threshold, as well as the minimum lot width is 60 feet. There is a private street with a hammerhead turnaround at the end. And then moving on to the PUD, so 9 single-family dwellings are being proposed on those lots. One of those already exists on the property, so that's being incorporated in the plat. 3 example building plans that they've just provided as kind of just examples of the types of homes that are generally intended to be built within the PUD. And so those range from 2,100 to 3,800 size as far as the square footage of the floor plans of those houses. Looking at setbacks within the R3, the front setback's 15, the side is 5, but both sides have to equal 15 and the rear's 20. So certainly the large lots, there's no issue with achieving the minimum setbacks for that zone. Looking at our PUD base density, R3 is 9.5 dwelling units per acre, and the proposal is 0.92. So certainly there's no bonuses that are required as part of this PUD. And it's really just to accommodate the private street is really why they're moving through the PUD requirement here. So brings us to the plat. You can see this is the intersection of Augustine and Eddington, located here. And so there'll be a private street that ends up, going off that intersection, meandering up, and then the hammerhead configuration turnaround here is located at the end. And so you can see the 9 lots that are wrapped around that private street. Gives you an idea of how it's going to be served by utilities. The green line represents sanitary line. The blue is water. And then the storm, a little fainter, is the reddish line located on kind of the west side of the street there. Ends up being piped into a stormwater detention pond, which will end up connecting to another main, which is going to be built in Augustine and Eddington Avenue there. I would note that per engineering's requirement, they ended up stubbing a water line for redundancy out to that west property line. So at some point in the future, the property to the west ends up being developed. They're at least able to connect at another location for water on that property. So this is a grading plan. It's kind of hard to see. Each one of those lines represents 1 foot of elevation change. And you can see just, the effects of carving the road into kind of the hillside there. You've got about, every one of these numbers about 5 feet of elevation change. And so that's going to cut into the hillside and ends up gaining elevation until you end up topping out kind of at these locations here. And this is the PUD site plan that was submitted, so you can see the existing house footprint, which is located here. And then those are the footprints of the sample home plans that they've submitted, located there. So you can see there's quite a ways to all the property lines. So setbacks certainly aren't going to be an issue with this one. So this is, I think, type A. So this is one of the first examples of the houses that they're planning on building. So this is 3,800 square feet. And this is really just a main floor at grade with a walkout basement. And on the back side, 5-bed, 4-bath with an office on the main level. Kind of gives you an example here. The next home, about 1.5 stories with a garage in the basement, 2,100 square feet. Living space on primary floors with potential for extra space in the basement. 4-bed, 3-bath with office guest room on the ground floor. And kind of the last example here, just a 2-story house with basement or attached to the side, depending upon topography. About 2,400 square feet living space on the primary floors with some potential for extra finished space in the basement. 4-bed, 2.5 bath with office guest room on the ground floor. So looking at our private street standard, it's a 20-foot wide paved roadway. There's curbing on both sides, 5-foot sidewalk on one side, and no on-street parking. Augustine Avenue is designated as a collector street, as I mentioned previously. Water is just being connected to the intersection of Augustine and Eddington. And the 2012 Comprehensive Water System Plan indicates the existing system is adequate for potable and fire flows in the area. Sanitary is connecting in a similar location, so being installed in Eddington. 2011 comp plan indicates the existing system is adequate to carry the additional flows generated from this PUD. And then storm sewer, like we mentioned before, it's piped near the northern property boundary there to a stormwater detention pond. near that intersection. Parkland dedication, so there's 9.79 acres of net developable land. R3 requires 7%. There's 0.69 acres is the dedication requirement. And so this is much like the first edition. They have a larger park property plan for the second phase or the second edition of Eddington. And so they've been working with the Parks and Rec Commission and the department to defer the parkland dedication requirement until that later phase. And so this was reviewed by Parks and Rec Commission, and they recommended approval of deferring this parkland for this portion during their meeting on July 28th, just this last month. So with that, staff recommends the commission conduct the public hearing, and upon consideration of testimony received, recommend approval of the comprehensive plan land use designation, approval of the proposed rezone, approval of the PUD, and approval of the preliminary plat for Eddington Estates with no conditions. And then, of course, in accordance with the commission's decision, we'll need RCS for the 4 actions. So certainly try to answer any questions you have.
Questions for Mike? I do have one. The memo that came from the engineering department had quite a lengthy list of issues that they had that needed work on, including the plats and a variety. I've got the letter here, but what is the status of what they were looking at? I recognize they were, as he described them, high-level comments, but there were a number of issues that he thought needed to be resolved. And I just wondered what the status is.
Those will be addressed prior to advancing to council. And so it's common for the plan review process to go back and forth during that time, but
Okay.
usually it's advances to planning and zoning commission, and there still are some corrections that need to occur between that and council. And so that was essentially the reason why this one's going to be a little bit later than the rezone that we heard before this.
Okay.
And so that'll be advancing probably the next month.
So we can advance this knowing that these are unresolved issues.
Yeah, there are issues that don't necessarily require a condition of approval, that it's city code requirements. They just have to
Okay.
work through those. So.
Okay. Any other questions for Mike? Okay. Oh, Joel?
One number of the drawings, going back 3 or 4 drawings, there was a dotted line that, well, you can see it there. I'm curious exactly what that is and what it's supposed to represent. It's mainly to the west side.
This?
Yes. Why?
That just represents a existing parcel boundary. He's got that overlaid on this. So if you look at, it's like an existing property line is what
Okay.
it represents.
Well, that,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they, typically the way the county, and usually when you have a homestead, you have a house, and then you have land that's actively being farmed around the perimeter of that. Sometimes they'll do this where they'll just separate it into 2 parcels so they can tax it a little bit easier, because
Okay.
the ag land's getting taxed, differently than the single family home lands. So they're able to separate actively farmed areas from that. And so that's why I'm envisioning it looks like this with the property lines.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, really it's this whole property. It just happens that there's this portion of property line on the inside of that. And I think it's probably county tax reasons. And so the engineer is just showing that on the plat as being an existing property line. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's helpful.
So any other questions for Mike? Okay, Mike, thank you very much. With that, we will open the public hearing, and we'll start by hearing from the applicant.
Hello, my name is Scott Sumner, 106 South Hayes in Moscow. Sorry, I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant. I've worked on the Eddington phase as well as future phases, and this is one of those extensions of that project. One of the things with housing that we've really tried to do throughout multiple projects is different types of housing. The same people who are going to be buying townhomes and smaller single family homes aren't the same people who might be buying this. So providing different, and along those same lines, the same people who are building those homes might be different than the people who would be building these. It's a different product market and other things that go into it. So one of the thoughts with this project, especially with the topography and kind of where it's located between that parcel to the south, is really trying to provide another product and something different with another housing style that, one, can be built, and two, that will provide more housing to the area. One of the concerns as we're going through the design on this project is the parcel to the southeast that's currently owned by Germer Construction. I hope that's not a concern because Germer is doing all the work out there. They're in conjunction with all of this. They're going to be doing the work on this project. So if there are any concerns about leaving that piece in the county, I hope that's not a concern for yours. This is working in kind of conjunction with them as well. So it's not something that we're hamstringing what they're trying to do or creating a situation where they're not able to access or develop their property the way they would want to as well. So I'm really here just to answer any of the questions other than that you guys may have.
Great, thanks, Scott. Any questions for Scott? Could you give us kind of an idea of what Germer is planning on doing? Or I know they're doing your earthwork, I presume.
I could tell you, but it will change tomorrow and maybe the day after that,
Okay.
and then the next week. Where it's in the county, there have been a lot of options. His access road, we've kind of shown the existing access road is shown on there. And he's working on the grading, and we're going to be revising some of the grading to accommodate his access road and make it more feasible. But at this time, it's in the concept stage. There's like 32 acres around that parcel that he has. And it depends on the economy, the market, and all the other things. So it has changed probably 3 times since I've had the conversation with him. So
Are the plans compatible with what you're doing with the rest of the project, as far as you know?
we will make them compatible. I know one of the concerns on Eddington Phase 2 that we've kind of been looking at and working with the city on is stubbing out on Eddington Phase 2 into that other parcel so that they could have another secondary access. I don't know how to flip behind, but
I can flip for you. Where you want to go?
just kind of back so you can see Germer's and Eddington Phase 2 and kind of that area.
That's the colorful one.
So Eddington, you could kind of see Germer's dump site. That's the lighter brown between the ag forest. Yeah, see Germer's dump site there. As it continues to go down to the south, we have a connection to the south of that on Eddington Phase 2 that will tie into that property. So with 30 acres, like we were saying, and you guys mentioned in the previous rezoning conversation, that once you get so large for fire access, you're required to have a secondary access. So for Eddington Phase 2, we were providing that secondary access to the southeast of that Germer parcel and the west of Eddington Phase 2. The parcel that we're working on right now, really with elevation, doesn't really tie in to how that piece would be developed. There's a ravine just to the south of this where everything kind of drains down. So utility wise, flow wise of everything, there's not really a good connectivity. And that's why we're kind of going with the head. And depending on how that one gets developed, there's not really that interconnectivity option for this one, but we are accommodating it on future phases of the Eddington main development to not hamstring or, paint them into a corner where they're kind of stuck. So that is being taken into consideration.
Okay, any other questions for Scott? Okay, Scott, thank you very much.
Scott, can I ask really quick? So is the house going to stay there? Is the plan?
The house is going to stay there.
And so is it going to be on like lot? I'm trying to place it. Lot 3. Okay. Thank you.
So the house is currently on, I think, a septic and a well, and there's a well actually that's located on the park property in the northwest corner and has a service line that runs a couple thousand feet. With this development, I think we'll be connecting everything, all the houses to city water and sewer.
Great. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Scott, thank you very much. So seeing no other people in the audience, I will close the public hearing. We'll open it up for conversation. I do have one thing, Scott, that I would like to pass on to you. You can take this for what it's worth. The minutes of your neighborhood meeting were virtually unreadable, and I think it did a disservice to the neighbors, and I think it did a disservice to your project. I would hope that when something like that comes back to us, you take a little bit more care with them. They were pretty bad. So as I say, for what it's worth. So with that, any questions or comments from commissioners? All right, so Mike, I guess we're ready to proceed. Do you need a separate motion and approval for each, or can we lump all of them together?
I think you can, I mean, since there's no conditions, I think you can probably just lump them all together. Yeah.
So what's going to be the best format for this to come to you for, if just
Well, you can just go through them one by one and just recommend approval
Yeah,
of the
okay.
comprehensive plan, land use designation, recommend approval of the rezone. Yeah.
Okay, and then maybe we can do the RCS as a separate, but do
Sure.
all of the, okay, so Victoria has volunteered.
Yeah, so I recommend approval for the proposed comprehensive land use designation and for the rezone that's been proposed and the approval of the PUD with no conditions and the approval of the preliminary plat that's been presented.
Okay, do we have a
I'll second.
second? So Dennis second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed and abstentions. And then we need a motion for the preparation, directing staff to prepare the RCS.
I propose that we have staff prepare the RCS.
So Victoria's motion, Dennis's second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed and abstentions. Okay, great. Scott, thank you very much. You're all set. And with that, we will move to the final, not the final item, but item 5. This is approving the RCS for, I believe this was the SWIFT project. So I'll be abstaining from that vote, but I guess I can still take the motion in second. So,
Yeah.
okay, so do we have a motion to approve the RCS as drafted?
So moved.
Motion we approve the
Okay, so
RCS.
Dennis motion,
Second.
Victoria's second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Jennifer, record me as abstaining on that one. So, okay, terrific. Joel.
The most interesting item that's scheduled for tomorrow at 4 o'clock is a discussion of some elements of regional transportation, including a discussion of Sand Creek Road, which relates to what we just did.
Yeah.
So I look forward to that. There's also to be some discussion of the what's going on with the streetscape analysis of downtown.
Okay. Super.
So 4 o'clock tomorrow in this room.
Great. So next meeting, we'll get a full report from you. So, great. Okay. Announcements. I guess we were thinking that by approving the RCS for the War Bonnet project this evening, we might have a opportunity to cancel the meeting for the, what is that, the
24th.
24th?
Yeah, we'll have a couple public hearings, I believe, the first meeting in September. So yeah, certainly can cancel the next meeting. I hadn't had anything planned for that agenda, so.
Okay. Is anybody object to canceling the next meeting? So seems like everybody think that's okay. So, okay. Anything else left for the good of the order? If not, meeting's adjourned. Did we get everything covered, Mike? I think we did.
Yeah.
What do you guys got going the rest of the summer?